Welcome to the Forest School Podcast, a show where I, Lewis, and my co-host, Wem Southerner, set out to explore a shared pedagogy. It's a space where cerebral thinking matters more than craptivities, where educational purpose outweighs pretty resources, and where inclusion is more than just a buzzword. Join us as we overthink the trivial, deep dive into whatever sparks our dopamine, and reflect on what it means to truly hold space for others, holistically and without judgment. Thanks for being here. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Yo, hello everybody. We're here. Everybody's here. I've got fierce morning voice because I overslept this morning, and now I've got a voice that sounds low and rumbly.
Smooth radio.
Yeah, that's the one. Normally when my voice sounds like this in the day, my wife goes, "Oh, just go to bed," because this is what happens after I've talked in the woods all day. Listeners, we're here with Max Alexandre, who's got the, look, I'm going to hold up my copy. Mum's probably got her copy as well. Look,
I've actually got one as
3
well.
for 3. Check that.
In case you ask me anything about it, I can't remember, even though I wrote it, I can quickly oh yeah, what did I say?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I have exactly the same thing. Often people go, you know, in that podcast where you talked about, and I go, no, the words came out, and then the retention of them has gone. Max wrote The Joys and Shapes of Autistic Play. Great book. Sorry, Wem, go on.
No, go on. I was just going to say that we have already recorded a podcast episode about the book, but without Max. And then a mutual acquaintance has connected us in a very joyful way. And we have managed to have Max along to talk about the book and talk about play and all the rest of it. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to our mutual acquaintance who made this happen. So just to begin with, Max, would you mind, especially maybe for those listeners who haven't yet read the book or haven't listened to the other podcast, can you tell us a little bit about your current work and your career, and then maybe we'll get on to the book after that?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, usually when I'm asked this question, I'll either respond in 30 seconds or 10 minutes. So I'll try and aim for somewhere between those two extremes. So yeah, I Play Radical, which is my organization of one person. It's just me. I hope it's not just me forever, longer term plans. But yeah, I work as a play worker, an artist, a consultant, a writer, often whatever I'm approached to do. Often when I work as an artist, often what I'm doing is working as a play worker, but putting in the right words for the person paying me to get to do the play thing. Yeah, I've worked, and I primarily focus on working with neurodivergent and disabled children, young people, and adults. I don't get to work with adults as much as I'd like, but I do. And yeah, my work is all about just creating spaces for authentic play, whatever that looks like. The ways I do that is really varied. So I'm a maker. I make things, I build things as things to play with, or to ignore and play with something else, or to use in a completely different way than I expected. I guess a large part of what I do, I think why I find it hard to talk about it, it's just about holding the space in a certain way, and it's when people are what do you do? It's well, I pay attention and ask a question at the right moment, and that sounds very
sounds very mystical wizard.
Yeah,
you could really play that up.
Yeah, but I could, especially as I've always got sticks with me. There's something magic wandy about that. But I'm not magic. I am good at my job, but I'm not magic. So I do a lot of one-to-one work, which I guess is unusual to be a play worker who does that. And it is often a little bit different. It feels a little bit different. You're often more of a play partner than a play worker, I think, when you're working one-to-one. And that's just the nature of it. But I work with a lot of kids who that's the only way they get to access play at that point in time. They need that. I've done a lot of work, for example, working with kids who are autistic and or have varying other complex needs, who have been sort of excluded from mainstream education and are now super isolated and don't have any interaction with the outside world. And then I go in and get to know them through play and create those opportunities, and then everything comes from that. But I also go and wrangle 20 kids for a day as part of a summer camp situation. So it's super varied. I was originally training as a learning disability nurse.
Ah.
Yeah, I used to say I'm half a nurse because I completed half my training, but as the years go by, I think that decreases. I don't think it's fair to say I'm half a nurse now. I think I'm maybe an eighth of a nurse at this point. So I was studying learning disability nursing, and at the same time got a part-time job working at a place called The Yard in Edinburgh. I'm up in Scotland, which is an adventure playground for disabled and neurodivergent young people. Got a job as a play worker there, completely like fell in love with it, and then ended up being like, this could be my thing. Like, I loved the nursing, I loved the element when I was with the people, and then everything around it, not so much. I spent a lot of time hiding in storage cupboards because I'm autistic and hospitals are full of fluorescent lights and you do 12-hour shifts, and that just doesn't work for someone like me. So yeah, so I started working at the playground. I worked there for 5 years and sort of developed my own practice, and then sort of I was like, I want to take this into other spaces. So that's kind of what I've been doing since. And I also wrote a book, and I write some things and draw some things. Yeah, many things, but the connecting thread is usually play and often neurodivergent disabled inclusion in that. Those are the
amazing.
I think that's a huge way that a lot of neurodivergent individuals find, like, I don't want to say like career success, but like employment success is being like, I am this and also sometimes this, and being able to be like, here's the kind of zone that I live in, but I move from piece to piece. I definitely feel like that's a massive draw of Forest School, and the work that I do is like being able to be like, it's this, but I can kind of pull on different strings to move in different places. Yeah, that's I think a journey for a lot of people.
100%. I feel very, very fortunate that I've found a way, and realistically, it's not the most sustainable career situation. Like, things might change at some point. They're always changing. I'm always having to rethink things, but I've essentially found a way to survive in a capitalist world by being myself, and that is pretty great.
I think I'd push the other way. I think it's the most sustainable way, because I always look at this stuff and go, because if this one falls, I've got these 5 places that are kind of at 10%, and maybe I could turn those dials up. Whereas if you're just all in, then I think that's the thing. Do you think? Okay, here's a question that was not on the list of questions, but I'm now hearing your journey, a bit more about your journey. I'm wondering whether you think that there's any connection between, so a lot of my partner's doing like a medical degree at the moment, and lots of that is about like learning and kind of these contextualizing, and here's like research works on this specific thing, can you go and read up about that, or here's a condensed version of what you need to know about mental health, because like nurses are often triaging, aren't they? They're kind of meeting people at the front. Do you think any of that training and that history was one of the things that made you maybe think, I could put together this kind of concise thing about play that people haven't necessarily wrapped their heads around yet?
So one of the things that I feel so grateful for from my like nursing experience and nursing training is, and it's not quite what you're saying, but it's kind of linked, is that it's like reflection. You record everything you do, you think about it, you ask yourself these questions, that was like so drilled into me, and I took that into my play work, arts work. I have extensive notes on every single session I've ever done, to the point where like it's a pathological problem at this point. But it's like, I do feel like it's trained my brain to be able to, and this also, through the nursing training, I think this is when I kind of hooked into this ability to be able to take a bunch of information and narrow it down to the core point. It turns out that's something I'm quite good at, even though like I didn't realize for a long time. I really struggle with studying, because if I have to learn about something I'm not interested in, it is like physically painful. But if I look at it as a game where I have to find the information, like I enjoy that process so much that like that's the kind of way. I think I've kind of gone off piece from your question, but I do think that background, that training, and that way of thinking has been really helpful as things that I've taken into something else. Especially I think working when I'm employed as an artist, for example, and I'm working with other artists, like the way I do things is often completely different to anything they've ever. It's when they're like, and it's actually really useful. It's been a nice thing to like share those like techniques and stuff. But yeah, I do just really love information.
Yeah.
He's
totally.
and playing with that, and very passionate about accessible information specifically for different people.
Yeah,
that's a big part of the practice.
Yeah, that's something I think, if I'm thinking about like the transition to forest school from something like teaching, where maybe when you're doing your teacher training, you're encouraged to be reflective and think about like the previous lesson and how that went and what you observed and stuff. But then the reality of the situation is, when you're teaching, it's all about the future. It's like, what are you doing next? What are you doing next? And your reflection is basically like, how well did the kids do? Oh, well, make them do better. And less about yourself and your own practice and the community of the classroom.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is something that is so key to forest school, so key to successful forest school. It's about, and like when you're saying about keeping notes, like Lewis and I, maybe not necessarily like written, although we do use an app. We used to use an app to reflect, but like just talking about like on and on and on about like, oh my God, did you notice this moment? Did you notice that moment? And that reflexive sort of muscle, I guess, like being really active, and something that if you're moving from something like teaching, you've probably got that in there somewhere, but you're so unused to flexing it in that much detail that it's a bit of a learning journey.
And I think it's also super valuable, and I imagine this is very similar in forest school, is when you're doing stuff that's motivated, where the goal is play, to find a way to validate that to the people who are going to pay you to do that or put money in or time to do that, is like such an important, you need to find a way to do that, and finding a way to do that that feels genuine and like not extractive either. Like, I don't like being like, here's a list of everything this child did in this session and why I think I'm just like, no, that's none of your business. That's special. That lived in the session. That was part of it. I've recently experimented with writing haikus about my sessions to share with people.
Love it.
So it's like I have my notes and then I create a little haiku, and it's like, here's a little flavor of the feeling of what happened in that room through my eyes. So you get to experience that without me, taking a bunch of pictures.
That's incredible. I bet that absolutely catches people off guard, though, if they're not expecting it. If they've gone, hey, we've hired this guy, he's just going to give us some feedback on the session. Sorry, this is 3 lines. That's incredible.
I really want to read the book of haiku of play sessions now. I want that to be
that would be a great way to summarize, because I'm at the moment, I'm on a bit of a journey about.
So I have a zine. So this isn't publicly available yet, but it will be, from a series of recent sessions. This was for like participants and their families and stuff, but there's going to be a digital copy. So
yes.
How would you feel about sharing one of them?
Yeah.
Or would you rather not?
No, I'm down with that. I think that's the thing about it. If I find it really useful, because I often find it really hard to communicate my work without it feeling just weird. Like, I don't want to like talk about, especially when you have like the lens of like, I'm often working with like disabled children or children whose lives are seen as like, who don't get privacy. And it's like, yeah. But yeah, I can. Oh, this is a good one. They're all good. I don't know. Okay. Airborne Tangled Pink. Percussive Raspberry Chorus, Spring Need Absorption. So
love it.
Oh.
So,
do you know what I think? I think that is so. I think the outdoor world, and particularly like you're saying, like we're all in the space of play working and holding space for people. And I'm a real big advocate of play needs an amount of privacy, and that is really hard to do professionally, because I put something up recently on our social media where you're just trying to balance the fact that like your company has needs of like exposure and showing people what you do, but also you're like, I don't really want to like exploit the play that happens by being like, hey, could you just perform a little bit better because it will help me get more clients, or let me, because then I think subconsciously I'm going to start being like, oh, I accidentally showed more interest in that because it looked good on Instagram than, some other play types which maybe looked more like insular or are harder to explain. But like a haiku would be an incredible way, and more things like that. I know someone who had. There was a role at one of their, I think it was forest school, but maybe not called forest school, sessions where they had just a record keeper, and they would like paint the day with just kind of like a big sheet, or sometimes it was like the story of the day or things like that. And like, there's definitely something in there, isn't there, about communicating.
Abstract and artistic ways of reflecting or documenting. Yeah, I'm so into that. I've just started my PhD on play at forest school, basically, and so I'm learning I'm going to be learning all these amazing kind of research methods, and I'm really interested in the mosaic approach, where you get the participants to do things like this. It's like, are they going to take photos or films themselves, or make an amazing scrapbook or some art or whatever, and then look at that stuff that they've created with them in order to then see what's been made or see what's been shown, and then hear a commentary on that as well, and that kind of thing. And I'm just all about that, like, interesting abstract ways of doing it, involving the participants as well, rather than just like, I observed this, as you say, that kind of like, participant A did this, which is great for them because they struggle with that normally. It's just like, yeah, how can we move away from that into a different realm? Like,
Max, I wonder if that leads into one of the things that we wanted to talk about on our list of questions, but we should eventually get to. But that idea of, like, Wem's there talking about participants having like ownership in the documentation, ownership in the thing, and lots of the stuff that's in this book is like your experiences of things, and there aren't many books about that neurodivergent voices need to be heard in the conversations about neurodivergent play. How do you feel that kind of wraps up? Was that something that you were really like, this needs to come from me because it's my voice, when you were putting the book together? Was it kind of just like, oh, I'm going to put this together and it happens to be that I'm a great voice for this stuff? What's that journey like?
There's definitely, firstly, yes, more neurodivergent voices writing about neurodivergent experiences, more people of color writing about their experience of people of color, more like, yes, like, very much here for that. I think is really, it's essential. It's essential to have anything that's like meaningful and helpful. I think part of the way I approached this book, something that had kind of prevented me from a lot, so I had the idea for it like 10 years ago, when I was first like getting into what a playwork and learning about things, and I was like specifically looking at the Bob Hughes play types and being like, yes, and I was like, but for so long I was like, the way I was thinking about it was like, I need to replicate this way of doing things. And it's like, so I need to create like a taxonomy of like the autistic play types, and it just didn't quite work. And I thought about it for years, and it was actually only when I realized, I came across it, thought of the idea of like the play shapes, which is like a little bit different. They're these moving, like loose patterns that are not trying to be an overview of everything, and they're not yet. But it was like, sort of that realization was like, but also along that was like, because that's how my brain works. So like, that's how I need to write this, and that's how I need to approach this. And there's something really like validating about that, because while I was trying to do it in a way that someone else would do it, I was just not really getting anywhere. When I just realized, I need to do it in a way that suits how my brain works. And then it has that double thing of like, and that's also useful because I'm an autistic person writing about autistic play. Like it feels like every part of it had to be authentic to that. Like, even like the way I've structured it and the way I've conceived of the things is, I'm not trying to translate it into anything else. I'm not sure if that really answers your question.
It does. I wonder how would you feel about, just hypothetically, I don't think someone should or necessarily would do this, but how would you feel if someone took this and then went, I think I can taxonomize this in a different way? I guess the question there is like, how much of this work is like, it has to be in this, let's use the word shape. It has to be in this shape because this is the way that your brain worked, and someone else could put it in the way that their brain worked, but then would it still be your stuff, or would that then make it their stuff? I don't know what I'm asking now.
I wanted to ask something about, so you were saying the difference between something like Bob Hughes's taxonomy and then what you've created, which is coming from that place of going, there's stuff missing from this, which I also share that viewpoint, like going, discovering Bob Hughes and going, God, this is so amazing, this is so interesting. And then the more you work with it, going, yeah, but like, what else? But that you didn't want to write a taxonomy, but you clearly also wanted this book to present these autistic shapes of play for other people to see, to think about, to recognize. So whilst it's not a taxonomy, why do you think it is important for play workers and those who are maybe in that field of observing play? Because even this book is, very valuable to anyone who has a family or works with young people or is a parent or a teacher, everybody. You don't have to be a play worker to get a lot out of this book. Why did you want to still present these shapes in this kind of book format for people to understand and reflect on?
So yeah, so it's funny because there's such like a strong part of me that goes, it's not a taxonomy, but it's like, but it also is. And actually, the thing that I'm rejecting, that I feel like a rejection towards, is the way taxonomies are used. In that you look at something like Bob Hughes play types and you go, well, this is what play is. And whereas actually the idea of having lots of taxonomies that you hold a bit more lightly and recognize that they can all be valuable and all work in different ways, and some are going to be more helpful to you than others, and some might not make sense to you. And then I'm just like, oh yeah, taxonomy, great. A taxonomy is as being, I guess we have such like a cultural fixation on finding the answer and nicely classifying everything, which I don't think is very helpful or possible. And that's when things like taxonomies become not helpful, because then someone looks at something like Bob Hughes and is like, oh, this kid doesn't play in these ways, so this kid is playing wrong. And it's, but to answer your actual question, why did I want to do it? Because honestly, like primarily because they are ideas that make me really happy and I want to share them. I think like play is like my special interest. It's the thing I'm most interested in, and there's that very personal level of like, so I want to share this because that's how I connect to the world. So there's that stuff, can't be overlooked. And also I feel, and I've kind of done talks and training on these play types for a few years now, and from having like feedback from nursery staff who I've done it for, artists who I've done it for, secondary school people who I've done it for, the feedback has always been just like really, really positive, and people have found it a lot more helpful than I kind of realized they would. And so there was also that desire to be like, great, then cool, this can be helpful for people, because more play, just more play. And I go into a little bit in the book. I think I talk about the like the whys of talking about autistic play, and I talk about like the responsive whys that feel really like they're responding to them. So the whys that are about how still autistic play is seen as not play, or autistic children are seen as not playing, how poor mental health in autistic adults is significantly like a higher problem than it is for like their non-autistic counterparts. Like obviously there's a lot of crossover in different things, but like when you look at like statistics for things like this, I'm like, well, that's play isn't fully the answer, but play is a part of that. Play is about following your instincts, and being able to play and being allowed to play tells you that you have value. And like there's links there. There's a huge picture, but it's part of it. And then I talk about like the joyful whys, which is like, because more of this is great. Autistic play is beautiful and exciting, and I want more people to engage with it in this way. I
find this stuff really helpful there's a few ways that I've already found the book like super helpful in practice, and like maybe I'd really like to sort of share with you a few of the ways if I can. This may just be like me going, it's so great, I'm going to do that for a couple of minutes. I hope that's all right. So I think one of the ways that like Wem and I were talking about the fact that there's so much reflection in our work and you're talking through stuff, and one of the ways that I find things like this really helpful is they become a shorthand for something that you might have already known and already seen, but you can then start to go in conversation, you can go, thingy's doing body mapping and blah 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 blah, which is way faster than going, they really need to know where other people's bodies are in space. And I think what they're trying to get out of that, and you can just, it's like a shared shorthand that just allows practitioners to understand what they're seeing between each other and go, yes, of course I've seen that, or like, oh, actually I wonder if it's that. Yeah, it's probably that. That is incredibly helpful. I think it really helps having things like this for, you were talking earlier about that we are all in a space where we have to justify our work to somebody, whether that's parents that are paying to come, or to schools, or to councils, or whoever else. And stuff like this makes you seem real smart when you say this. And I love that. And I mean that
emphasis on the
like
seem real.
I seem really smart. My whole life is just about how do I seem smart? But maybe what's the word? Maybe like, I don't want to say authoritative, because that makes it sound like higher, like, oh, I'm better and I know these things. But it conveys maybe a sense of trust that you know, particularly I think when you're working with neurodivergent individuals or people with access needs, some of the work that you end up doing can be quite waffly to explain. It can be quite like, well, they kind of needed this, and actually that wasn't quite what they were looking for, and so I tried this. And whereas having, I'm going to call them taxonomies, I know we're pushing against, but like,
no.
Having that stuff is really helpful to then talk back to someone who doesn't know, and gives you a sense of kind of security of like, hey, here's what I've observed. This is the words that I'm going to use. I have a vocabulary that fits my wheelhouse, you know, and all those things. So those two things are like, communication wise, this is incredible. And then the last one, I'm not sure if you would have intended this, so this is maybe my question, but like, I have always found Bob Hughes' stuff very helpful when someone is trying to do a play type, but they don't, like, it's almost like a play type is emerging. Maybe somebody wants to start doing locomotor play, but they're not quite there. You know, you work in early years and you see someone in there, I can see where you want to go. And so I can facilitate that more. And I don't know, again, was this your intention that some of these shapes are now things that I see participants doing maybe like 10% of, and it's given me the confidence to go, I think I know where you're taking this. What happens if I now extend this and provide the space or the conversation for you to go full pancake stacking, fuck this, this is what we're doing for half an hour, ba-dum, 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 as opposed to going like, yeah, you're trying to do something and I don't know what it is. I don't quite know where to, I can see there's a need there because you've made me be Batman and fall over 5 times, but what is it? Whereas this stuff is super helpful for me as a practitioner to go, that's where we're in mindset. Was that something that you were hoping to get from publishing this?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think, that's so cool to hear. Because part of it is about like, part of why I think these things are useful is because sometimes we just don't see things unless we have the concepts for it. Like, it's the thing that helps us, like, you know, see the colors that we didn't notice before. Through not seeing those previously, how we'll like might have inadvertently, well, almost definitely have like stopped playing its tracks and you know. But I think, I mean, that's pretty much exactly one of the things that I wanted to come out of it, what you're describing. So, and it's one of the reasons, like, I think there's something about, for me anyway, getting to read and see different people's interpretations of things, it like keeps me curious.
Sure.
Which I think is really important as a practitioner as well, is that like, if I've recently been engaging with something and then I go into a space, I'm going to be thinking about that and it's going to help me see things differently and pick up with it. And that's just going to make me better at what I'm doing.
It's really when I'm reflecting myself on my own practice, we've been conditioned to see play as something that should happen in a normal, in inverted commas, way, that child development should happen in a normal kind of way, in inverted commas, and that our role as adults working with people who are playing, young children who are playing, is to progress them and to help them to learn and to therefore maybe get involved in a heavy-handed way and maybe direct play in a way that we think it should be going, and that having a word like pancake stacking and being able to recognize a type of play, a shape of play for what it is, and just go, that's enough. I don't need to change this. I don't need to shape this and make it go in this direction. It has a name, it is a thing. And so just having those kind of shorthands, just to have a conversation with yourself about it and to go, oh yeah, of course, that's enough. And it's joyful and it happened and that's great. And that's, I don't want to say, and that's all there is to it, because that makes it sound really trivial, but it's enough.
Yeah, I mean, I have been in such like a privileged position, largely because the way I've done my work is through accessing arts funding, is that I very rarely, sometimes, but rarely have to explain my work in terms of education value or like development or progress or any of these things. And I know so many people do. And I think it's important that like, it's not that a space where a child is being supported to develop is bad. It's just, that's not the only kind of space they need.
Sure.
You know, like, and often the way it goes is when children are neurodivergent or disabled or have more needs, is that they get less and less of the time when they're not being looked at through a like magnifying glass, and like people are just trying to make sure they develop properly and develop as much as possible, and really just like nip this divergence thing in the bud as soon as possible.
And often that's from like a good space, isn't it? I always feel like it's from a good space, but that good space leads people to like, we're going to do a catch-up session at break time, or like we're going to do like extra stuff with them before school starts in the morning. Like, a good place, bad results.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like because I get to do this other version, and I'm just so grateful that I do, is that like really it feels like it's part of my job. I guess like as an advocate almost, to be the person that's being like, wait, hi, hello, no. Like, I'm just going to bring you back to this thing right now. Like, I often think about when we talk about like why play is important for children, there's always things like, you know, like motor development, social development, learning, this, and I'm like, yes, great. But I often think those things are all about like, we're looking at the child and we're thinking about play for the child in terms of the adult they're going to become, rather than as the child they are right now. And then that stuff, the child they are right now bit, is the more ephemeral, less neat to put on a form thing. Whereas that's where I get to come from so much of the time. Like, because the irony is, if you focus on that stuff, all that other stuff comes anyway. Like, you know, like, but yeah, so I think part of another reason for like creating this work is about just creating another voice in a different form that's going, no, the child as the child is right now, that's what for. We're not thinking about that child as an adult. We're not thinking about what this means about how they will interact with a interviewee in 10 years time. You know, so yeah, I really do like feel so grateful, and I recognize that that's like such a privilege that I have. So I want to use that to be the often for people I think quite annoying voice of going,
but so valuable. I think sometimes we undervalue the need for, I mean, I'm going to use your word, I don't agree with it, annoying voices. They need to be there. Like, I'm going to say passionate instead. I'm going to put passionate in there because it is passion, isn't it? And it's only annoying if you disagree with that viewpoint, but that doesn't make it wrong. It just means that that doesn't sit in your value system, and someone else going, how about this, disrupts your thinking. Can I ask though, when you go on, I was
going to say, it's very anti-capitalist, isn't it? It's very, you know, it's an inconvenient, passionate voice.
So we'll take a minute to sit in the anti-capitalist, and there we go. So often one of the things I do with the work that so I've just started a new round of like for school each training, leader training. One of the things that we do is when we're doing the day when we look at play is I really encourage people to not just go play is for kids and play is a thing that children need to do. And they go, yeah, I'm not. Some people will go, I don't actually do that much playing. Playing's not my thing. And what they mean is I don't put on a sycophantic voice and bend down and go, I'm Goldilocks, would you be the three bears? And some people, that's just not how they want to play. And we encourage them to kind of look through and go like, okay, but how do adults play? How do, you know, have you had anyone come to you from this work that's kind of gone like, I've realized I do this in my, you know, like, because adults would take a break from work, and maybe a neurotypical adult sees their break from work as like, I'm going to go play like the Wordle, or I'm going to go play something that's very accepted in a societal way. It's difficult if you potentially go into the break room and go, Dave, bit of body mapping? How do you feel? Let's go. But it's equally valid for adults, right? Do you see this work as being applicable to adults?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, firstly, a lot of the feedback I've had is from autistic adults who are like, it's me. And some of like a really like thing that like really touched me was someone was like the partner of someone who was like, oh, they read this and then they got out their collection of, I won't say what it was just because like, they got out their collection of this specific thing that's been in boxes for years, and they've started arranging them and they're so happy, and they're just like, and that's the kind of thing that I'm just like, yeah, because I think, and that's also why, so in the book for each shape I have like, how can you help support this, but also how can you nurture it in yourself? And so yeah, I have sort of like ideas about like thinking from a practitioner point of view, perhaps like how to support this kind of play in a space. But then I also like, okay, but how do you turn that on yourself? And if you read this and you resonate with it and you see something yourself in it, how do you, here's a little push or a little nudge of a way to explore that, because it's not always obvious. I think like for adults, I mean, there are so many reasons why we have barriers to play, right? But I think maybe like perhaps like one of the really cool ones is that playing is about following your instincts, and we're taught to ignore our instincts. If you're an adult, if you were an autistic child with like really like unpredictable behaviors that really challenge people around you, you will have been told to ignore your instincts a lot from like quite a young age. And there's all degrees of that, right? And so then you get, for a lot of like autistic adults I know, and adults generally, is like they don't have a contact point with like what their actual even play instincts are. So how do you then play, you know? And then maybe their experience of that is being like, come and play football, and that doesn't make sense to them. But even like the ways that are modeled that are acceptable for adults to play are then don't hit. So then it's like, oh, I just don't play. Like that's not a part of. I do play.
Do you think that is changing?
Sorry.
Do you see that as something that is? I don't know. I don't know whether I think it like whether there are.
Have you seen how much money Warhammer makes? Autistic adults are driving the economy. Like,
I just wonder if there's also maybe more spaces where social media kind of helps, doesn't it, in a way that you can find other people with similar play preferences to yours, similar interests, and maybe form a group, form a society, carve out a space together where you can all indulge in this type of play, which maybe, as you say, growing up was kind of slightly discouraged, or you're made to feel weird for wanting to do that, and whether there is more awareness now. I don't know. Do you think it is kind of increasing?
I definitely think it is. I think there's a way to go, but definitely, yeah, I think it's definitely getting better. I think especially in those more like games based kind of type things, like I think that's still something that keeps coming to mind to me right now when I'm thinking is just like the thing I'm tripping up on is like it's still really difficult and not acceptable for a lot of autistic people just to have a body in public. Like the way a lot of autistic people naturally embody their body and need to move and need to like interact with the world around them, that is still so looked down upon and seen as like often threatening, depending on who you are. It's like, yeah, like for example, like an older autistic Black man who needs to like run and skip to do that in a park. Like, how is that looked on by a lot of people around? That's not safe. I think I often get a little bit tripped up on, and I'm not a huge part of like the social media world. I've been on social media, but I kind of struggle with it, both like ideologically, but also just like cognitively. It just doesn't work for my brain. I see a lot of talk now about like putting the emphasis on the individual to like, just have fun, just buy this, just do this, and I'm just like, and which is useful, but it's also, there's those wider things that are still like stopping people that can be about like safety and looking after yourself. I think something that, sorry, I've taken this a really dark way, but
no, that is so important to talk about. Carry on.
Something that is like really fits into this for me, and it's like really complicated, and yeah, I'm definitely not going to like do it justice, but you know, that is like age appropriateness is such like an ableist concept. Like adults who have like likes or interests or mannerisms that are like seen as childish are seen often like, which is often neurodivergent and disabled adults. Like we have such like a deep cultural aversion to that. Like it's really deep. And like we see, and I think it has a basis in like ableism. It's about what being an adult is, what being a functioning normal adult is, who doesn't need fixing. And yeah, like the reactions, like it's like people, it's like disgust, fear, pity, and it gets really conflated with like safeguarding, right? Is that like then adult, like at the darker end of this is adults who behave in like these, it's automatically they're seen as dangerous, and obviously some adults are dangerous to children, but not on that basis, you know. And I think it's really, and that becomes, yeah, like I said, like hyped up when it comes to people of certain genders and sexualities and races. Like like an older Black man who collects soft toys, how are they seen compared to like a white woman who collects soft toys?
Yeah,
both are probably seen as like pitiable or like a bit sad in some way, but one is seen as threatening,
yeah,
in a way that one is. So I think like,
and it's like an assessment of motives, isn't it? I think sometimes it comes down to people might see, that's an interesting example there, because they might see those two people doing the same activity but assume the motives of one person are different, as opposed to maybe like, oh right, Sarah's really into that, she's been collecting it since she was 12 and it's a hobby that she has. You know, Marcus is not seen the same way even though it's the same activity, and those kind of lenses, judgments, isn't it?
Yeah,
that
I remember seeing like
stuff.
a screenshot of a tweet that went around at some point. A screenshot of a tweet, because I've never been on Twitter. I see screenshots of tweets sometimes, but it was someone saying essentially that like it was like wrong for like two adults who like Thomas the Tank Engine to have sex, and it's like, Like, and it's just like, because for it was about autistic adults specifically, it was like, that's wrong. Like, autistic adults shouldn't be having that adult life. And it's like, and I just think, like I said, like, so much that in terms of like bringing this back to play, like, yes, there's all this. I think it's really great that like people are finding each other and people are like sharing hobbies, and people are being like, I can do that. I can play. And that's amazing. And I think it comes alongside. It needs to come along. There's these wider cultural things that are like are a bigger problem than. I think.
There's so much wrapped up in there, isn't there? And then there's stuff about like, you know, the removal of third spaces where people can go and do things, and like, and there's also kind of an encouragement that maybe I think we're in a space where more people are talking about it being okay for adults to play, but they would like that to happen privately. So it's like, not only is there not a third space to do it in, it's also like, I don't want to see you skipping. You can go to a skipping class. If you can access that and you can go and skip over there, but we don't want to see adults playing. IT would like it if you were like nice capitalist person outside, and then if you need to do that somewhere else, go do it privately. And again, making that like shameful, and you know, all of those things are like, all like you said earlier, they're all like interwoven, aren't they, of like what prevents people from playing authentically.
And I think you sort of see it happen with teenagers, is like they're in that middle ground where like certain behaviors start to be frowned upon, and they're in that like kind of transitional space, whereas like like I love working with teenagers. I don't get to do it very much, and I think that's largely because people don't see what I do as applicable to teenagers, because it's like teenagers need activities. Like,
I think that's the same with forest
the
school.
yeah.
It's like, you can't just come and play in the woods. You've got to come and learn carpentry in the woods, or learn how, you know, just hyping up the kind of bushcraft activity element of it, as opposed to you're just, we're holding space for you to do what you want, you know.
And some of that's wrapped up, isn't it? Because particularly in this country, we've got this idea that like middle teens is like start of assessment, start of GCSE. You're almost a person. The time is running out. You're almost a real adult. Come on, the pressure is on. You don't have long until you need to be a grown up. Fuck. And that's totally invalid, and just kind of expectations that we've built that we can also, you know, unbuild. We did say at the start, even if we get to a juicy bit, we need to stop at a certain time. And now I've got to the juicy bit. Max, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Thank you so much for putting the book out into the world. People that are, you know, you've said you're not super hot on social media, but where people want to find out more about your work and the blog and the book, where can they go?
So you can go to playradical.com, which is my website, and that's where you can find the book. You can download it. There's digital downloads for free. There is a donate option, but you can also buy physical copies there. And yes, that's kind of the main place. But also I have a newsletter that goes out on Substack, and that's probably my most consistent. It's every 3 months, but that's where like you'll hear about like more up-to-date stuff. And I am on Blue Sky, but I think I've used it. I think I've sent like 4 tweets, four Blue Skies. Since I've had it. So please find me on Blue Sky, and at some point I might get super into it. But if you subscribe to my newsletter and visit my website, and there's links to all those things on there, that's kind of the best.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so great to speak with you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.